Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network. Great to have you with us on the program today. As mentioned, talking about great moments in America's building history and America's building future. With us on the program is Mel Mingle. He's a professional engineer and engineer on the St. Louis Arch Project. Also on the program is Rick Godwin. Rick and Mel are principals of Steelform USA and Steelform Building Products, continuing to make building history with steel construction and engineering innovation. Mel and Rick, welcome to the program. Great to have you with us on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rick. Enjoy being here.
Well, there's so many interesting things to talk about. And Mel, I'll start with you because I'm fascinated with the St. Louis Arch Project. And this is something when I went back and was looking at pictures knowing you were coming on. This is still an amazing structure. Tell me a little bit about your involvement on the project. This has to be like a highlight of a career.
Well, it's actually one of the first things I did in graduation from the engineering school at the University of Tennessee. I was working for an engineering company out of St. Louis known as S&P, Sutter and Parcell, and they were the structural engineers on the project. The fabricator for the project was Pittsburgh Des Moines Steel Company, who we were working with, and actually they're the ones that brought us in on the Arch project. They did the fabrication in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for it. So that's kind of how I got connected with it, and I was just a junior engineer and a little bit green behind the ears.
I'm sure you learned quickly on something like that. Rick, when you look at that, do you think, man, I would have given anything to have been part of that project when they started building back in the early 60s?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was fairly young. I've yet to even visit that project, but it's beautiful.
Mel, talk a little bit about something that always amazes me is when I look at it, the elevator. How do they have the elevator work that's such a steep angle?
Actually, the elevators are like a pendulum almost. There's a car in each leg of the arch, and it's connected with a elevator system, of course, up in the pinnacle, the observation portion of the arch. And by loading one side and unloading the other side, it almost operates at no required large horsepower. In other words, the car goes up and the car comes down. Are you with me?
Yes, yes.
And it really works very well. Actually, it's almost maintenance-free compared to a standard elevator. Of course, it has to be inspected like all elevators do. But it's really a unique design because of each leg is a triangular shaped profile, and the car actually runs in that void, if you will, up and down each leg. In other words, when the car on the left-hand side is all the way up, the car on the right leg is all the way down.
Well, it's a fascinating structure. Construction began in the early part of 1963, 630-foot monument in St. Louis, the tallest man-made monument in the United States. And Mel, just a couple more questions on that, and then we'll move on and talk about. Basically, this was done in some modular components, and I want to talk about that. But first of all, were there a couple of particular problems, things that would surprise us in putting this project together? I mean, at such a steep angle, and something like this had never been built before. What were some of the problems you ran into?
Actually, I guess the largest challenge we had from an erection point, we erected both legs separately and then joined at the center. You know, we took the legs up equally, separately, and then joined them at the center like you would with a keystone arch. Not too big of a challenge. A lot of engineering work was done, and this tolerances were so close, it was unbelievable when we put that center piece in at the top. It fit within the thickness of a cigarette paper.
I mean, it's just amazing. You're listening to This Week in America. We're talking about great moments in American building history and America's building future. With us on the program, Mel Mingle, professional engineer, Rick Godwin. They are principals in Steelform USA and Steelform Building Products. Over 50 years globally in a number of major projects we'll be talking about in the program. Rick, I had mentioned modular. Was it even called modular back then, or was that more like a prefab type of situation?
I'm not sure modular had made its way onto the construction scene quite yet. Really, modular kind of came into its own when the early days of prefab mobile homes
Yes.
And yeah, that was referred to modular. However, later on, Mel worked on high-rise modular precast buildings in New York, low income and apartment buildings there in New York City after World War II. So modular's been around for a while.
Mel, tell me about where we are with modular. Read a story not that long ago in the Wall Street Journal, and a lot of people, because of Hurricane Sandy, are rebuilding and they're using modular construction. And I'm looking at that, and they look like regular suburban homes, have a lot of custom features. So many of us are thinking back to, again, we mentioned the prefab, thinking back to that's the way modular looks. Is this a wave of the future? Because they really look like homes I would want to live in. Everybody would want to live in.
Rick, it is a way of the future. It's an old concept that just never has been accepted in the construction industry, but it's such a ridiculous thing of what we've been doing. No one today would go downtown to the parts stores and buy all the parts to assemble an automobile at home, would they?
Absolutely
So
not.
modular construction of buildings makes sense, and we're beginning to see a lot of it. As an example, a lot of hospitals today have a modular bathroom, and all the bathrooms, of course, in a 340-bed hospital are very similar to each other. So they're built in a plant, taken to the job site, and then just hooked up. And the headboard at a patient's bed has all of the amenities that you have to have for the medical. You have oxygen, you have all the digital readouts for your computers and your blood pressure control and all of those systems. So they're making those in a plant today and then installing them at each room. So it's a thing that's going to happen. It's going to happen in all buildings.
Rick, I know in the early days, people would talk about modular and almost equate that with inferior construction. Do we see better quality now?
Yeah, we certainly do. Modular construction is kind of coming to its own, and you mentioned Hurricane Sandy. There's a lot of companies up there that's building modular homes in the past and delivering them, intact. In the past, we talked about trailer houses or mobile homes or whatever. Well, those were built without code, and they're built on steel frames to move it up and down the road. Today's modular homes can meet all local codes, and really, instead of being more like a mobile home, it's more like a high-end, type house these days. So they're all built to local codes, whatever those codes may be, and hauled in. We were involved in the base realignment and closings with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they use stacked modular barracks, two-story stacked in Fort Bliss and El Paso, and then four-story at Fort Sam Houston down in San Antonio. So we're seeing it more and more. Couple of reasons probably is the tolerances are getting a lot tighter these days on your steel production equipment or even wood production equipment. Yes. And BIM software and design software has come of its own finally. So your tolerances are so much tighter, and even framing and modular assembly equipment is now readily available. So it's come a long way since it first started, for sure.
You're listening to This Week in America, our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Information on our guest on the website. Our guests are Mel Mingle and Rick Godwin, principals of Steelform USA and Steelform Building Products. Their website and information on exactly what we're talking about in the program today, it's steelformbuildingproducts.com. Projects I mentioned they've been involved in: government buildings, residential, commercial, educational, civic, you name it. They've been involved in working on this. Rick, one final question with the modular. When I'm looking into this, I'm reading that story, they basically are saying modular makes sense because it's greener, faster, and smarter. Does that pretty well sum up the advantages of modular?
Well, it does. It surely does. Like we were talking about, the modern computer design software has taken a lot of the guesswork and tightened up all your tolerances, and that's been really big. But, also the savings in time on a project, the speed of construction, return on your investment. Modular construction allows for you to be working on the soil while you're building the units, and at the same time. In days past, you'd go out and turn the dirt and get it all ready, and then you start bringing in the concrete. Well, today, all that can happen at the same time.
Mel, you talked before. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rick, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say also a few construction benefits as far as it can be built inside, indoor construction, so you don't get any moisture on your materials and shrinkage and all that. And so it can be built inside and then delivered to, you know, further areas away from town. They can be built in town in the plant, control your products, control your moisture, and then ship them to the site wherever they may be. You can reach remote areas that way.
Well, you've been there with this modular concept from the very beginning, back to the days of St. Louis in prefab and modular in building the arch. Mel, I want to go back and talk about something you said. You were comparing how we build homes with how we build cars, and that's fascinating to me. Talk a little bit about that and maybe the costs that are involved because of the different methods we use in building those.
Actually, if you think about it, you'd have a lot more efficiency if you built buildings, you know, in a production manner rather than what we refer to as a stick concept. There's one thing about the arch that we didn't talk about, and that project had what's known as a composite system using steel and concrete. Those triangular-shaped modules that was used on that project were composites, you know, using steel and concrete
right.
and together strength-wise. And that's what we're doing today. A lot of the products that we're dealing with are composite-type products.
And you can get information on that and everything we're talking about on the program today at the website, which is steelformbuildingproducts.com. I want to talk about some of the things that you've done. You've been specializing in energy-efficient modular commercial construction. Your products help build the Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden, Colorado. Rick, talk to me about that for a couple minutes.
Well, that was an interesting project that went over about a 2-year period. The DOE, they took that project and they were looking for a prototype for the first net zero office building. So that'd be an office building that not only that uses absolutely no energy, and in fact that building sells energy back to the grid. And the way we got involved in it is the Delta stud made by Steelform has a thermal break in it. So they were trying to look for the best product that could frame the exterior of that building and stop that heat and cold from passing to the inside in a curtain wall application. So that was about 500,000 square feet in a couple of years. And I believe it was, I think the longest stud was 56 foot long. So it was a pretty long product, and they were hung on that building where they stood off of the building just a little bit. That way, as the heat and cold would come in, it would have a break there and not make its way in. And then also, they pulled the heat out of those wall cavities and took it down into the Rocky Mountains down below grade. So when they need it, they could pull that heat or cold back up into that building.
You know, when you talk about green construction, in fact, one of the things that's so neat is you go to the website, which is steelformbuildingproducts.com. You've got Rick's reports and Mel's memos. Mel, you're talking about green construction and saying basically the tipping point is approaching. Are we close to the point where it's not going to be something that's occasionally done in our community, but it's going to be basically the way of doing business in construction?
Well, I believe it is, absolutely. I think we have to go back to living in an environment. What happened over the years, our homes originally, for instance, the one that I grew up in was well ventilated, and, you know, we didn't have a sealed cocoon that we lived in, but we've built homes today that are sealed cocoons, and we heat and cool them, and we don't take in fresh outside air, and we don't have any green growing inside. We're gonna change that. We just have to change it. It's happening without the U.S. in code form, and I would assume pretty soon we'll see it in all of our areas as a code requirement.
Mel Mingle, Rick Godwin, our guest on the program. A couple minutes left in the show. They are principals of Steelform USA and Steelform Building Products. Their website, steelformbuildingproducts.com. Of course, you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and get more information. Rick, I want to talk about, and most people wouldn't know this, there's actually Department of Education Solar Decathlon, and you were a world winner, building the Living Lighthouse. Talk about that. This is award-winning. This is international. You are really out front with this technology.
Well, that Living Lighthouse actually was built by the University of Tennessee engineering students, and the Department of Energy, the DOE, has a contest every 2 years, and it's open to, you know, they'll have certain criteria for these houses, but it's open to any university in the world, and it happens every 2 years on the mall in Washington, D.C., the National Mall. And this year they had one coming in from China. There's one from Japan, Sweden. A lot of other countries are also represented, or at least their universities are represented. And it's around 20 different universities that bring those houses in there. And basically what they do is they take, for about 10 days, they have to actually live in that house and use it off the grid, totally off the grid. And for instance, one night they have to have 10 people over for popcorn, and one night they have to have 8 people over and cook them a dinner, So the house not only has to be compact, well designed, but also has to be able to move out and become a real living unit. And Mel went to the University of Tennessee. Mel graduated from the engineering class there. So when we heard that they were going to be involved in that, we were more than happy to jump in there and try to help in any way we could. So we were fortunate enough to get the floor and roof joist and also the studs on the wall because we were looking for thermal benefits. And it was really, really an interesting thing. We had a lot of very, very excited kids, and that was probably the neatest thing, was just being around kids that are just so excited about what they're doing for the future.
Mel, that had to be exciting to be part of, to help build that project, but having your alma mater there and having all these bright young minds, are we, with the people coming into the profession, are we in good stead for the future?
We are. We hear very little publicity about the universities today, but you would be amazed at what's going on in the young minds at these universities, and particularly in those professions such as engineering and the medical field, the biomedical field, and this green energy situation that we're trying to encourage in our buildings all over the U.S. They're really into it and doing a great work. I think it's amazing. They get very little publicity, but there are students in this country that are very talented and doing great work.
Unfortunately, out of time on this program. Would love to have Mel and Rick back. Mel Mingle, professional engineer, Rick Godwin. Mel and Rick are principals of Steelform USA and Steelform Building Products. Their website is steelformbuildingproducts.com. Go to the website. I mentioned Mel's memos. He talks about green construction, one of the latest postings that he has. Rick's reports, talking there about vertical building. Wanted to get into that. I'm fascinated by that in the program, but we'll have him back and talk more about that. Again, the website is steelformbuildingproducts.com. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. It's been great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
You're listening to This Week in America on the Blue Funk Broadcasting Radio Network.